Woman got locked out of her hotel room. A single black dad helped her, unaware she was the CEO. The digital clock in the Grandview Hotel lobby glowed 11:47 p.m. as Rachel Martinez dragged her wheeled suitcase across the marble floor, her heels clicking with each exhausted step. 3 cities in 5 days. 14 presentations. Countless handshakes with investors whose names already blurred together in her mind like watercolors in the rain. She fumbled through her purse for the keycard, her fingers brushing past business cards, breath mints, and the small silver locket her mother had given her years ago, the one she never wore anymore. The keycard wasn't in the side pocket where she always kept it. Not in the main compartment either. Rachel's heart sank as she realized the truth. Somewhere between the airport shuttle and the elevator, she'd lost it. Perfect, she muttered, pressing the elevator button for the 15th floor anyway, hoping against hope that maybe she'd left her door unlocked. But of course, when she arrived at room 1547, the electronic lock blinked red mockingly at her attempts to push the handle down. The elevator ride back to the lobby felt longer than her entire flight from Seattle. Rachel's temples throbbed with the kind of headache that came from too much coffee and too little sleep. She'd been looking forward to nothing more than a hot shower and the hotel's Egyptian cotton sheets. Instead, she found herself standing in line behind a man arguing loudly about his minibar charges while the single desk clerk looked like she'd rather be anywhere else on earth. Next, the clerk called without looking up from her computer screen. Her nameplate read, "Ashley," and she had the kind of bored expression that suggested customer service wasn't exactly her calling. "Hi, I'm locked out of my room. Rachel Martinez, room 1547. Rachel placed her driver's license on the counter, along with her business card out of habit. Ashley barely glanced at the ID before typing slowly with 2 fingers. "Okay, so I need to verify your identity, but our system is super slow tonight. It might take a while." "How long is a while? Could be 20 minutes? Maybe an hour?" "Hard to say." Ashley shrugged as if she were discussing the weather. "You can wait over there if you want." Rachel felt her professional composure cracking. "An hour? I've been traveling for 15 hours. Isn't there anything else you can do?" "Sorry, company policy. We have to run the verification through corporate security. It's like a whole thing." Ashley's attention had already shifted to her phone, where she was scrolling through what appeared to be social media. "Can I speak to your manager? He went home at 11. But don't worry, the system usually works eventually." Rachel stared at Ashley for a long moment, trying to decide if it was worth the energy to escalate this further. She'd dealt with difficult people all week, stubborn investors, dismissive board members, employees who thought they knew better than she did. The last thing she wanted was another confrontation, especially when she felt this drained. "Fine," Rachel said, grabbing her ID and business card. "I'll wait." She found an oversized leather chair near the lobby's artificial fireplace and sank into it with a sigh that seemed to come from her toes. The lobby was mostly empty except for a few late-night travelers checking in and out. Soft jazz played from hidden speakers, the kind of generic music designed to be pleasant and forgettable. Rachel pulled out her phone to check emails, but her battery was at 3%. Of course. She rummaged through her purse for her charger, but realized she'd packed it in her suitcase. Every small inconvenience felt magnified when you were this tired. She leaned back in the chair and closed her eyes, trying to center herself the way her assistant Melissa had taught her. Breathe in for 4 counts, hold for 4, breathe out for 4. But instead of feeling calmer, she found herself thinking about her corner office back in San Francisco, with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay. Tomorrow she'd be back there, making decisions that affected hundreds of employees and millions of dollars in revenue. Tonight she couldn't even get into her hotel room. "Ma'am? You okay?" Rachel opened her eyes to find a man in a dark blue security uniform standing a respectful distance away. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with kind eyes and the sort of genuine concern in his voice that she hadn't heard from anyone all day. His name tag read, Jamal. "I'm fine, just locked out of my room," Rachel said, sitting up straighter. "Waiting for the desk to sort it out." Jamal glanced over at Ashley, who was now openly watching videos on her phone with earbuds in. His jaw tightened slightly. How long you been waiting? About 20 minutes. They said it could be an hour. An hour? Jamal shook his head. That's not right. Look, I can't override the system myself, but I can keep an eye on your luggage if you want to grab a coffee or something. The cafe down the street is still open. Rachel looked at this security guard, really looked at him. There was something different about his offer. Not the polished politeness of someone following a customer service script, but genuine human kindness. When was the last time someone had offered to help her without wanting something in return? That's very thoughtful of you, but I think I'll just wait here. I'm too tired to go anywhere else. I understand that feeling, Jamal said with a smile that reached his eyes. Mind if I sit? Just for a minute. It's been a long shift, and these shoes aren't as comfortable as they look. Rachel gestured to the chair across from her. Please. As Jamal settled into the chair, Rachel noticed the way he carried himself, confident but not arrogant, professional but approachable. There was a weariness around his eyes that she recognized, the look of someone who worked hard and carried responsibilities that others couldn't see. So what brings you to the Grandview? Jamal asked. Business or pleasure? Business. Always business. The words came out more bitter than Rachel intended. Jamal nodded knowingly. I hear that. Sometimes I think this place sees more stressed out business travelers than actual vacationers. You'd think a hotel this nice would be full of people having fun, but mostly it's folks like you who look like they need a vacation from their vacation. Rachel found herself almost smiling. That's probably the most accurate description of my life I've heard in months. From across the lobby, Ashley's voice called out with all the enthusiasm of a sloth on sedatives. Ma'am? The system's still processing. It's gonna be at least another 45 minutes. Rachel's shoulders sagged. Jamal noticed immediately. Tell you what, he said, standing up. I'm going to have a word with Ashley. Sometimes a little encouragement helps these things move along. You don't have to. It's no trouble. Part of my job is making sure guests are taken care of, and right now, you're definitely not being taken care of. Rachel watched as Jamal walked over to the front desk, his posture straight and purposeful. She couldn't hear what he said to Ashley, but she saw the desk clerk remove her earbuds and actually start typing with more than 2 fingers. There was something about Jamal's presence that commanded respect without demanding it, a quality Rachel had spent years trying to master in boardrooms. When he returned, he was carrying a bottle of water and a small packet of crackers from behind the desk. Thought you might be hungry, he said, setting them on the small table between their chairs. And I may have motivated Ashley to work a little faster on your room situation. Thank you, Rachel said, and meant it. You really didn't have to do all this. My daughter always tells me that kindness doesn't cost anything, but it's worth everything, Jamal said, settling back into his chair. Smart kid. Smarter than her old man most days. There was something in the way he mentioned his daughter, pride mixed with a kind of gentle sadness, that made Rachel want to know more. But before she could ask, Ashley's voice rang out across the lobby with noticeably more energy than before. Ms. Martinez? Your room is ready! Rachel looked at the clock. It had been exactly 12 minutes since Jamal spoke to Ashley. She gathered her purse and stood, feeling genuinely grateful for the first time all day. I don't know what you said to her, but thank you. You saved my sanity tonight. Jamal stood as well, extending his hand. Just doing my job, ma'am. Hope you get some rest. As Rachel shook his hand, she felt something she hadn't experienced in months of business meetings and negotiations, a genuine human connection. This man, whose job was to walk around the hotel lobby at midnight, had shown her more consideration and kindness than people she paid 6-figure salaries. Have a good night, Jamal, she said, meaning it. You too, Ms. Martinez. Sweet dreams. As Rachel walked toward the elevator with her luggage, she found herself glancing back at Jamal, who had returned to his rounds, checking doors and ensuring the late-night guests felt secure. There was something about him that stayed with her as the elevator carried her up to the 15th floor, a sense that she just encountered someone genuinely worth knowing. She had no idea how right she was, or how much this simple encounter would change both of their lives. Rachel's keycard worked perfectly this time, but as she stepped into her hotel room, she realized something was wrong. The bed was unmade, towels were scattered on the bathroom floor, and someone else's belongings were spread across the dresser. Room 1547 was occupied. "You've got to be kidding me," she muttered, grabbing her phone to call the front desk. But before she could dial, she heard voices in the hallway, Ashley's unmistakable bored tone and another voice she didn't recognize. "Yeah, we had a mix-up with the rooms. The computer assigned the same room twice. It happens sometimes when the system is slow." Rachel opened her door to find Ashley standing with a middle-aged man in a bathrobe who looked just as frustrated as Rachel felt. "So where exactly am I supposed to sleep?" the man asked. "We're totally booked tonight," Ashley said with the same shrug she'd given Rachel earlier. "But we can set up a cot in the conference room, or maybe you could share with someone." "Share with someone?" The man's voice rose. "I'm not sharing a room with a stranger." Rachel felt her last thread of patience snap. "Ashley, this is ridiculous. You gave me a keycard to an occupied room, and now you're telling this gentleman there are no available rooms? What kind of operation are you running here?" Before Ashley could respond with another shrug, Jamal appeared around the corner. He'd clearly heard the commotion. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice calm but authoritative. "Computer glitch," Ashley mumbled. "Double booked the room." Jamal looked from Rachel to the other guests, then back to Ashley. "What about 12:05? I saw housekeeping finish that one an hour ago." "Oh." Ashley blinked slowly. "I forgot about that one. Why don't you get Mr. Jamal looked at the man in the bathrobe. "Peterson. James Peterson. Why don't you get Mr. Peterson set up in 12:05, and I'll help Ms. Martinez find another room?" Ashley nodded and led the relieved Mr. Peterson toward the elevator. Rachel watched them go, shaking her head. "Does this happen often?" she asked Jamal. "More than it should," he admitted. "Ashley's new. Still learning the ropes." He pulled out a small notebook from his shirt pocket. "Let me see what we've got available." As Jamal flipped through his notes, Rachel found herself studying him more carefully. His uniform was crisp and clean despite being near the end of his shift. His movements were methodical, professional. There was something about the way he handled the situation that reminded her of her best managers, people who solved problems instead of making excuses. "Looks like 1847 just opened up," Jamal said. "Same room layout as 1547, but on the 18th floor. Better view too. How do you know all this when the desk clerk doesn't?" Jamal smiled, and Rachel noticed how it transformed his entire face. "I pay attention. Part of my job is knowing what's going on in this building. Ashley will learn eventually, but in the meantime, somebody has to make sure guests are taken care of." As they walked toward the elevator, Rachel found herself curious about this man who seemed to care more about customer service than the actual customer service representative. "How long have you worked here?" she asked as they waited for the elevator. 3 years next month," Jamal said. "Started on the night shift because it paid a little extra, and the schedule works better for my daughter." "Your daughter?" The elevator doors opened, and they stepped inside. Jamal pressed 18. "Maya. She's 8. Goes to bed around 9, so working nights means I can be there for breakfast and help her get ready for school. My neighbor Mrs. Chen watches her when I'm here." Rachel felt a pang of something she couldn't quite identify. When was the last time she'd had breakfast with someone she cared about? That must be challenging, balancing work and parenting alone. "It has its moments," Jamal admitted. "But Maya's worth every sacrifice. She's the smartest kid in her class. Well, I'm probably biased, but her teachers say so too. Wants to be a scientist when she grows up. Always asking me questions I can't answer about how things work." There was such genuine pride in his voice that Rachel felt a lump form in her throat. She sounds wonderful. She is. What about you? Family? The simple question hit Rachel unexpectedly hard. No. No family. My career has always been demanding. Jamal nodded thoughtfully as the elevator reached the 18th floor. I used to think I had to choose between being a good father and having a successful career. Took me a while to realize that being a good father was the most important career I could ever have. As they walked down the carpeted hallway, Rachel found herself wanting to know more. What did you do before this? I was in construction. Foreman on a big project downtown. Good money, but the hours were unpredictable, and I was traveling to different job sites all the time. When Maya's mom... He paused, his steps slowing slightly. When it became just Maya and me, I knew I needed something more stable. Something that would let me be the parent she deserved. Rachel heard the careful way he mentioned Maya's mother, the pause that said more than words could. That must have been a difficult decision, changing careers. Honestly, it was terrifying. Going from a foreman's salary to security guard pay wasn't easy. But Maya needed me more than I needed a big paycheck. He stopped in front of room 1847. Here we are. As Jamal handed her the new keycard, Rachel realized something had shifted in the past few minutes. This conversation felt more real than any she'd had all week. Here was a man who'd made a significant career sacrifice for his family, and he spoke about it with quiet dignity rather than resentment. Thank you, she said, meaning it in a way that went beyond just the room's situation. For everything tonight. No problem at all. And hey, if you need anything else, I'll be around until 6 a.m. Don't hesitate to call down to security. As Jamal turned to walk back toward the elevator, Rachel surprised herself by calling after him. Jamal? He turned back, eyebrows raised. Your daughter is lucky to have you. The smile that spread across his face was genuine and warm. I'm the lucky one, Ms. Martinez. Maya reminds me every day what really matters in life. As Rachel watched him walk away, she found herself wondering when she'd last felt that kind of certainty about what mattered. Standing in the empty hotel hallway at nearly 1 a.m., she realized she couldn't remember. Rachel had expected to fall asleep the moment her head hit the pillow, but instead she found herself staring at the ceiling, replaying her conversation with Jamal. Something about his quiet confidence and clear priorities made her restless in a way she hadn't anticipated. At 2:30 a.m., she gave up on sleep and decided to get some ice from the machine down the hall. The 18th floor was silent except for the distant hum of the elevator and the soft padding of her bare feet on the carpet. As she rounded the corner near the ice machine, she was surprised to see a familiar figure sitting in the small seating area by the windows. Jamal was there, still in his security uniform, but he looked different somehow. His shoulders were slumped, and he was staring out at the city lights with an expression that seemed far away from the composed professional she'd met earlier. Jamal? Everything okay? He looked up, startled, and quickly straightened his posture. Ms. Martinez. Sorry, I didn't expect anyone to be up this late. Just taking a quick break. Rachel noticed the empty coffee cup in his hands and the tiredness around his eyes that seemed deeper than what a long shift could cause. Mind if I sit? I couldn't sleep anyway. Of course. As Rachel settled into the chair across from him, she could see the city sprawling below them through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Beautiful view up here. It is. Sometimes I come up here during my rounds, especially on tough nights. Helps me think. Jamal turned the empty coffee cup in his hands. Maya had a parent-teacher conference today. Well, yesterday now. How did it go? Jamal was quiet for a moment, and Rachel could see him wrestling with something. She's doing great academically. Straight A's, ahead of her grade level in math and science. But Mrs. Rodriguez, her teacher, she's concerned about some other things. What kind of things? Maya's been asking for school supplies that other kids have. The fancy calculator, the art kit with all the special markers. And she started declining invitations to birthday parties. Jamal's voice grew softer. Mrs. Rodriguez thinks it's because Maya knows we can't afford the gifts other kids bring. Rachel felt something twist in her chest. That must be hard to hear. The worst part is, Maya hasn't said anything to me about it. She's 8 years old, and she's already learned to protect my feelings by not asking for things she wants. Jamal looked out at the city lights again. What kind of father does that make me? The kind who works night shifts so he can be there for breakfast and help her get ready for school, Rachel said quietly. The kind who gave up a higher-paying job to be more present in her life. But what if being present isn't enough? What if she needs things I can't give her? Rachel thought about her own childhood, growing up with parents who could afford anything she wanted but were rarely home to give it to her themselves. Jamal, can I tell you something about being a kid who had all those fancy supplies? He nodded. I had the best of everything. Private tutors, expensive art supplies, whatever the latest trend was. But you know what I remember most from my childhood? Coming home to an empty house. Having a nanny help me with homework while my parents were at another business dinner. Missing school events because either of them could take time off work. Rachel surprised herself with how much she was sharing. She rarely talked about her childhood, even with close friends. Maya has something those other kids with expensive calculators might not have, she continued. She has a father who knows her teacher's name, who made a career change to prioritize her needs, who sits with her at breakfast every morning. That's worth more than you realize. Jamal looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. What about you? Do you have kids? No. The word came out sharper than she intended. I've been so focused on building my career that I never made time for a personal life. I tell myself it's because I want to be successful, but sometimes I wonder if I'm just afraid of failing at something that really matters. What do you do for work? Rachel hesitated. She'd spent the entire week introducing herself as the CEO of Technova Solutions, but something about this quiet conversation made her want to be just Rachel for a while longer. I run a company. Technology sector. It's demanding, and I've let it consume my life more than I should have. Do you love it? The simple question caught her off guard. I'm good at it. I've built something successful from nothing. But love? Rachel thought about her corner office, her packed schedule, the constant pressure to make decisions that affected hundreds of people. I used to think I did. Lately, I'm not so sure. Maya asks me sometimes if I like my job, Jamal said. I tell her that I like taking care of people, making sure they feel safe. That's true, even if the pay isn't what I'd hoped for. You're lucky to have that clarity. Clarity came at a cost. I spent too many years chasing what I thought success should look like instead of figuring out what actually made me happy. Jamal stood up, smoothing his uniform. I should get back to my rounds. Early morning shift change is always busy. Jamal? Rachel stood as well. Maya is going to remember the father who cared enough to change his whole life for her. Trust me on that. Thank you, Ms. Martinez. That means more than you know. As Jamal walked toward the elevator, Rachel remained by the windows, looking out at the city below. For the first time in years, she found herself questioning not just what she'd accomplished, but what she'd sacrificed to accomplish it, and whether the trade-off had been worth it. Rachel finally managed a few hours of sleep, but she woke up earlier than planned. The conversation with Jamal had left her mind churning with thoughts she usually kept buried under endless meetings and quarterly reports. At 7 a.m., she decided to head down to the lobby for coffee before her flight. The morning shift had taken over, but Rachel was surprised to see Jamal still there, talking quietly with an elderly woman near the concierge desk. She hadn't expected him to still be working. Didn't he say his shift ended at 6 a.m.? Rachel ordered her coffee from the lobby cafe and found a seat where she could observe without being obvious. The elderly woman looked distressed, gesturing toward the front entrance while speaking rapidly to Jamal. He listened patiently, nodding and asking questions Rachel couldn't hear. After a few minutes, Jamal walked with the woman toward the elevator. Rachel watched as he pressed the up button and continued talking with her, his posture attentive and kind. When the elevator arrived, he helped her inside and went up with her, despite clearly being past his shift time. "Excuse me," Rachel said to the young man behind the cafe counter. "Do you know what happened with that elderly lady?" "Oh, Mrs. Chen? She got locked out of her apartment building. Lives a few blocks away. Happens sometimes when she forgets her keys." The barista wiped down his equipment while talking. "Jamal always helps her when she comes in. Lets her use the phone, sometimes even walks her home when it's really early and dark outside. He does this often? Every few weeks, maybe. Mrs. Chin has some memory issues, and I think Jamal reminds her of her son who lives in another state. She trusts him." The barista smiled. "He's good people, that one. Always looking out for folks." 20 minutes later, Jamal returned to the lobby. Rachel watched as he stopped at the front desk to speak with the morning clerk, then made his way toward what she assumed was the employee exit. But before he could leave, a young couple approached him. The woman was crying softly while her partner held their crying baby. Rachel moved closer, pretending to read the newspaper rack nearby. "I don't know what else to do," the woman was saying. "We've been up all night. The baby won't stop crying, and we're supposed to check out in an hour, but we haven't slept at all. Our flight isn't until tonight, and I can't function like this." Jamal's voice was gentle but confident. "Have you tried walking with the baby? Sometimes the motion helps. And there's a quiet garden area on the 3rd floor that a lot of parents don't know about. Peaceful spot, good for calming both babies and parents. We tried walking in the room, but the neighbors complained about the noise," the father said, looking exhausted. "Tell you what," Jamal said, glancing at his watch. "I know the 3rd floor is empty right now, no events scheduled until this afternoon. Why don't I show you where the garden area is? And if you need to extend your checkout time, I can talk to the manager. New parents need all the help they can get." Rachel watched as Jamal led the grateful couple toward the elevator, still in his uniform despite being an hour past his shift end. She found herself following at a distance, curious about this garden area she'd never heard of. The 3rd floor had a completely different feel from the guest room floors. Jamal led the couple to a set of glass doors that opened onto a small but beautifully maintained rooftop garden. There were comfortable benches, small trees and planters, and a fountain that provided gentle white noise. "This is perfect," the mother whispered, already looking more relaxed as the baby's crying softened. "Take as long as you need," Jamal told them. "I'll let the front desk know you'll be a late checkout. No extra charges." As Jamal headed back toward the elevators, he nearly collided with Rachel. "Ms. Martinez, I didn't expect to see you up this early. I could say the same about you. Doesn't your shift end at 6? Jamal smiled sheepishly. "It does. But Mrs. Chin needed some help, and then those folks with the baby. Sometimes you can't just clock out and walk away, you know." Rachel thought about her own workplace, where people watched the clock religiously, and no one stayed a minute past their required time unless they were being paid overtime. "Your employer is lucky to have someone who cares this much." "I don't do it for the hotel," Jamal said simply. "I do it because it's the right thing to do. Maya's watching how I treat people. She's always asking questions about why I help strangers, why I stay late sometimes. I want her to understand that taking care of others isn't just a job, it's how we should live." As they rode the elevator down together, Rachel found herself seeing Jamal in a completely different light. At first, she'd appreciated his kindness toward her, but now she realized it wasn't special treatment, it was simply who he was. He extended the same care and attention to everyone, from confused elderly women to exhausted new parents. In her corporate world, people helped others when it benefited them somehow. They networked strategically, mentored people who could advance their careers, and volunteered for high-visibility projects. But Jamal helped people simply because they needed help, with no expectation of recognition or reward. "You know," Rachel said as they reached the lobby, "in my line of work, we spend a lot of time talking about leadership qualities. What makes someone effective, what inspires people to follow. But I think we miss the most important one." "What's that?" "Genuine care for others. Not as a strategy or a technique, but as a way of being in the world. Jamal looked at her thoughtfully. My daughter taught me that, actually. Kids don't care about your title or your strategy. They just know if you really see them, if you really care. As Jamal finally headed home to make breakfast for Maya, Rachel sat in the lobby with her coffee, watching the morning rush of guests checking out and business travelers hurrying to catch flights. For the first time in her career, she found herself wondering what kind of leader she really was, and what kind of person. Rachel's flight wasn't until 2 p.m., but as she sat in the lobby watching the controlled chaos of checkout time, she felt increasingly agitated. The morning desk clerk was as indifferent as Ashley had been the night before. Guests were complaining about various issues, and the general atmosphere was one of barely contained frustration. She tried to focus on her laptop, reviewing the presentation she'd be giving to the board next week about their company's expansion plans. But the numbers and projections that usually consumed her attention felt strangely empty after her conversations with Jamal. She kept glancing toward the security desk, though she knew he wouldn't be back until tonight. Around 11 a.m., Rachel noticed the same young couple from earlier struggling with their luggage while their baby cried in the stroller. The morning clerk was nowhere to be seen, and other guests were giving them annoyed looks as the baby's wails echoed through the marble lobby. Rachel surprised herself by walking over to them. Excuse me, are you the couple Jamal helped this morning? The woman looked up, her eyes red with exhaustion. Yes, that's us. I'm Sarah, this is my husband Mike. I'm Rachel. I saw Jamal show you to the garden area earlier. Did it help? It was amazing, Mike said, adjusting the stroller. We finally got some sleep. But now we can't figure out how to get to the airport shuttle pickup, and Emma here is having another meltdown. Rachel looked at the baby, whose face was red with crying, then at the parents who looked like they were about to break down themselves. Would you like me to help you find it? I saw Jamal mention that he knew this building really well. Maybe I can figure out where he would have taken you. Would you? Sarah's voice was desperate. We're supposed to catch the 11:30 shuttle, but we've been wandering around for 20 minutes. Rachel had never been particularly comfortable around babies or young families. Her world was conference rooms and client dinners, but something about helping these people felt important in a way she couldn't explain. Let me ask around, Rachel said, walking back to the front desk. The morning clerk, whose name tag read Brandon, was typing with the same slow, disinterested pace that seemed to be a hotel requirement. Excuse me, where is the airport shuttle pickup? Loading dock, basement level. Take the service elevator. Where's the service elevator? Brandon sighed as if Rachel had asked him to solve calculus. Through the kitchen, past the storage rooms. There should be signs. Should be signs? Look, I don't know exactly. I don't usually deal with the shuttle stuff. Rachel felt her frustration building, but then she remembered how Jamal had handled difficult situations, with patience and problem-solving rather than anger. Is there someone here who would know the exact route? This couple has a crying baby and heavy luggage. Maybe housekeeping? They used those elevators. Rachel spent the next 15 minutes tracking down a housekeeper who spoke limited English but was incredibly kind. Maria, as she introduced herself, not only knew exactly where the service elevator was but offered to show Rachel and the family the way. Babies need quiet route, Maria said in accented but clear English. I show you secret way. No crowds, no noise. As they made their way through a series of service corridors Rachel never knew existed, she found herself thinking about Jamal's comment about the hotel having quiet, lesser-known spaces where guests could find peace. He'd created a mental map of not just the building, but how to help people navigate difficult moments. The service elevator was larger and quieter than the main elevators, and Emma finally stopped crying during the gentle ride down to the loading dock. By the time they reached the shuttle pickup area, Sarah was actually smiling for the first time since Rachel had met her. Thank you so much, Mike said as they loaded their luggage onto the shuttle. We never would have found this on our own. And thank Jamal when you see him, Sarah added. That man is an angel. As Rachel watched the shuttle pull away, Maria touched her arm gently. You help like Jamal help, she said with a warm smile. Is good. People need kindness. Walking back through the service corridors with Maria, Rachel began to understand something she'd never considered before. The hotel wasn't just a building with rooms and amenities. It was a complex ecosystem of people trying to navigate stress, exhaustion, and unfamiliar situations. And there were people like Jamal and Maria who had made it their mission to ease that journey for others, not because it was profitable or strategic, but because it was human. Maria, Rachel said as they emerged back into the main lobby. How long have you worked here? 7 years. I start same time as my daughter starts school. Good schedule for family. Do you like it here? Maria considered the question seriously. It's hard work, but I like help people. Make beds nice, clean rooms so people feel comfortable. And Jamal, he makes sure we all feel safe too. He good man. As Maria returned to her housekeeping duties, Rachel found herself walking toward the elevators, not to go back to her room, but to find the stairwell that would take her back to the 18th floor, to the seating area by the windows where she'd had that late-night conversation with Jamal. She needed to think clearly about something that was becoming increasingly important to her, and somehow, that quiet space felt like the right place to do it. Sitting in the same spot where she'd had that vulnerable conversation with Jamal just hours earlier, Rachel stared out at the city skyline and felt something shift inside her chest. The morning sun cast long shadows across the buildings below, and she could see people hurrying along the sidewalks, each carrying their own invisible burdens and dreams. For 15 years, she'd measured success by stock prices, market share, and quarterly growth. She'd built Technova Solutions from a small startup in her garage to a company worth hundreds of millions, employing over 800 people across 3 states. She'd been featured on magazine covers, spoken at conferences, and earned the respect of investors and competitors alike. But in less than 12 hours, a hotel security guard had shown her something she'd lost along the way: the profound impact of simply caring about people as human beings, not as resources or networking opportunities. Rachel pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found her assistant's number. Melissa? It's Rachel. I know it's early, but I need you to do something for me. Yes, I'm still at the hotel. No, my flight isn't delayed. I need you to research someone for me. His name is Jamal. I don't have a last name yet, but he works security at the Grandview Hotel here in the city. She paused, looking out at the skyline again. I want to know about his background, his education, his work history. But Melissa? Be discreet about this. I don't want anyone to know what we're looking for yet. After ending the call, Rachel made her way back to her room to pack, but her mind kept returning to Jamal's words about his daughter Maya. A father who'd given up a higher-paying job to be present for his child's life. A man who stayed past his shift to help strangers simply because it was the right thing to do. At 1 p.m., as Rachel wheeled her suitcase through the lobby toward the waiting taxi, she made a detour to the front desk. The afternoon clerk, thankfully more competent than her predecessors, looked up with a professional smile. Can I help you, ma'am? I'd like to leave a note for one of your security guards. Jamal. He works the night shift. Of course. I can make sure he gets it. Rachel took a piece of hotel stationery and wrote carefully. Jamal, thank you for reminding me what genuine kindness looks like. Your daughter is lucky to have a father who understands what really matters in life. I hope our paths cross again someday. Rachel Martinez, room 1847 *. She folded the note and handed it to the clerk, then headed toward her taxi, feeling strangely reluctant to leave. 3 days later, back in her corner office in San Francisco, Rachel was reviewing quarterly reports when Melissa knocked on her door. I have that information you requested about Jamal, Melissa said, placing a folder on Rachel's desk. His full name is Jamal Washington. 34 years old, single father to Maya Washington, age 8. He has a degree in business management from the community college, completed while working construction. Exemplary work record both at his previous job and at the hotel. Rachel opened the folder and read through the details. Jamal had been a foreman making $60,000 a year before taking the security job that paid less than half that amount. He'd maintained perfect attendance, received several commendations from hotel guests, and was working toward an associate's degree in hospitality management through night classes. "There's something else," Melissa said. "I spoke with the hotel manager. Jamal has been recommended for promotion to assistant manager twice, but both times he's turned it down because the position would require day shifts and travel, and he didn't want to disrupt his daughter's schedule." Rachel leaned back in her chair, processing this information. Here was a man who consistently chose his child's well-being over his career advancement, yet still found ways to grow and contribute meaningfully to his workplace. "Melissa, I want you to set up a meeting with our HR director and get our head of security on the phone. I have an idea." 2 weeks later, Jamal was finishing his rounds at the hotel when the front desk clerk, a new one who actually seemed to enjoy helping people, called him over. "Jamal, there's a package here for you. Came by special delivery." Inside the elegant envelope was a letter on Technova Solutions letterhead. "Dear Mr. Washington. I hope you remember me, Rachel Martinez from room 1847. After our conversation, I did some research and learned about your background and experience. I'm writing to offer you a position as Director of Corporate Security at Technova Solutions. This role would include full benefits, a salary of $85,000 annually, and most importantly, standard business hours so you can maintain your breakfast routine with Maya. We would also provide tuition assistance for completing your degree. I'm not offering this position because I feel sorry for you. I'm offering it because our company needs someone who understands that taking care of people isn't just a job responsibility, it's a way of living. Your approach to security, to leadership, and to life is exactly what we need. If you're interested, please call my assistant Melissa to arrange an interview. But I should mention, the interview is really just a formality. I've already seen everything I need to know about your character. With gratitude, Rachel Martinez, CEO, Technova Solutions. P.S. Maya might enjoy our company's science lab. We host family days where employees' children can see real scientists at work. **. Jamal read the letter 3 times before it fully sank in. Then he pulled out his phone and called the one person who would be even more excited than he was. "Maya? It's Dad. You know how you always asked me about helping people and making a difference? Well, I think someone was watching, and something pretty amazing just happened." As Jamal explained the opportunity to his daughter, Rachel sat in her office 3,000 miles away, looking out at the San Francisco Bay. For the first time in years, she felt like she was building something that mattered, not just a successful company, but a place where people like Jamal could thrive and make the world a little bit kinder, one person at a time.